Michael Lawson Bennett sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the city lights through the wide glass window. He owned half the skyline. His name made headlines. But inside his own home, he was just a man trapped by his own choices. He had everything: wealth, power, and a beautiful wife named Clara. They had been married for 5 years. At first, their love was strong. They traveled, laughed, and built a life. But over the years, things started to change. Clara grew distant, busy with parties, friends, and her social status. Michael didn't mind much. He had learned to live with the distance. What he could not live with, however, was her younger sister, Emily. Emily was in trouble, and Michael knew about it from the first day he met her. She was bold, shameless, and always too close for comfort. She visited often, too often, and each time she came around, something felt off. She stared too long, laughed loudly, and touched his arm when she didn't need to. Michael had warned Clara about it more than once. "Your sister makes me uncomfortable," he had said. Clara had exploded. "Oh, now you don't want my family around? But your brother practically lives here, and I don't say a word." Michael had opened his mouth to speak, then shut it again. What could he say? That her sister had tried to kiss him once in the hallway? That he had caught her sneaking into his office late at night, wearing almost nothing? No. He decided to say nothing. Clara wouldn't believe him. She had made up her mind. So he stopped talking about it. He moved into the guest room to avoid late-night run-ins. Emily, however, took it as an invitation. One evening, Michael came back from a board meeting. It was late, past 11 p.m. He quietly made his way to his room, hoping to shower and sleep. He removed his jacket, loosened his tie, and went into the bathroom. When he returned, there she was. Emily stood in the middle of the room, wearing nothing but a towel wrapped low around her waist. Her long hair was wet, drops of water sliding down her shoulders. "What the hell are you doing here?" Michael asked, his voice low but sharp, quickly putting on his shirt. She didn't answer. She stepped closer, slowly, her eyes locked on his. "You've been avoiding me," she said with a slight smile. "That's not very nice." Michael backed away. "Get out, now." Emily didn't move. "Why do you keep pretending you don't want me? I see the way you look at me, the way your eyes follow me." "You're insane," he said, walking toward the door. But before he could open it, she rushed forward and grabbed his arm. "You don't get it, do you?" she whispered. "If you don't give me what I want, I'll scream. I'll tell Clara you attacked me. Then I'll go to the press. I'll tell everyone that the great Michael Lawson tried to rape his sister-in-law." Michael froze. Emily stepped even closer, now pressing against him. "Who do you think they'll believe? A billionaire man with power, or a young, crying woman with a towel?" His heart raced. His mind spun. If she screamed, just once, his world could crash. Clara would leave him. The media would destroy him. The board might suspend him. Even if it wasn't true, the damage would be done. Emily reached up, her fingers tracing his chest. He stood still, cold and stiff like a statue. "I'm not asking for much," she whispered. "Just once. That's all." Michael looked at her, saw the coldness in her eyes. There was no love, no attraction, just power, control. He felt sick, but he didn't stop her. And in that moment, the man who ruled empires couldn't even protect his own name. Michael sat on the edge of the bed, his heart pounding. His chest rose and fell quickly as he looked at Emily, standing there in front of him, still wrapped in nothing but a towel. The air in the room felt heavy. Then, out of nowhere, they heard it, a car driving into the compound. The sound of tires on the gravel path was sharp and clear. Michael rushed to the window, pushed the curtain aside, and looked down. His stomach dropped. It was Clara, his wife. "You have to leave, now," Michael whispered sharply, his voice almost breaking. Emily didn't flinch. Instead, She gave him a slow, sheepish smile and stepped closer. Her fingers brushed over his hand gently, as though nothing was wrong, as though she had done nothing wrong. She looked him in the eye and finally turned, walking calmly out of the room. Michael could barely breathe. He quickly straightened his shirt and wiped the sweat from his face. He tried to calm his racing heart. He could hear the sound of Clara's heels clicking against the marble floor downstairs. She always went to her room first. That was her routine. And, just as he expected, she did. Clara entered her own room, spent a few minutes inside, then walked into his. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. She noticed immediately how uneasy Michael looked. He stood by the window, pretending to admire the night view, but his hands were clenched. Clara stepped further into the room. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice neutral. Michael forced a small smile. "Yeah, just tired. Long day." Clara's eyes scanned the room casually, stylishly. She looked at the bed, the chair, the small table in the corner. Nothing looked out of place, nothing to suspect, nothing to accuse. "All right then," she said softly, still watching him. "Good night." Michael nodded. "Good night." She left. He sat down heavily on the bed, rubbing his forehead. That was too close. Way too close. He knew what Emily was capable of, but now he also knew she was playing a dangerous game. One he didn't understand fully yet. 2 nights passed. The house was quiet. Everyone was asleep. Clara had gone to bed earlier than usual that night. She had a mild headache and said she needed to rest. Michael had taken a warm shower, then returned to his room wearing only a pair of dark shorts. He lay on his bed, exhausted. Somewhere in the deep hours of the night, he felt the mattress shift. His eyes opened slowly. At first, he was confused. His room was dim, but the soft moonlight coming through the window showed a shadow beside him. She was lying right there on the bed with him. Michael sat up immediately, shock flooding his face. "Emily, what are you doing here? Get out," he said in a sharp whisper, trying not to wake anyone up. Emily didn't move. She looked at him, her face calm like she had every right to be there. "Please," Michael said again, louder this time. "Leave. Now." When she didn't respond, he got out of bed quickly. He didn't even bother to grab a shirt. He walked toward the door, ready to leave the room himself. Maybe that would make her go. But just as he reached for the door handle, something strange happened. Emily jumped off the bed and ran past him, fast. She didn't stop or say a word. She dashed out of his room and into her own, slamming the door behind her. Michael stood there, confused. What game was she playing now? Then came the scream. It was loud, terrifying, full of panic. Michael's heart dropped. He ran out of his room just as more screams followed. Lights started turning on all over the house. Doors opened. The domestic workers ran out of their rooms. Clara appeared too, wearing her nightrobe, her face pale and worried. Emily's screams continued, louder now, more intense. Clara turned to Michael, who was standing just outside his doorway, wearing only his shorts. Her eyes widened when she saw him like that. Sweat on his face, hair messy. "Michael, what's going on? What happened?" she asked, completely confused. Michael didn't know what to say. He had no words. He just stood there, breathing heavily, his heart pounding. Then Emily's door flew open. She stood there in tears, shaking, her robe slightly undone. Her face was red, her eyes wild. The house fell into silence, every eye on her. Emily looked straight at Clara. He came into my room," she began, her voice cracking. Michael froze. Everything inside him turned cold. Clara stared at her sister, then looked at Michael. Her eyes flickered back and forth between them. Michael shook his head slowly. "Clara, no, I didn't. She came into my room, I was just..." But Clara didn't say a word. She just kept looking at him. And Emily began to cry louder. The staff stood back, unsure what to do, what to believe. The hallway was cold and quiet after the chaos, but Michael's heart was loud in his chest. He stood there in only his shorts, staring at his wife Clara, who was clearly shocked and confused. Emily had just run into her room and screamed. Now, all eyes had been on him, her husband, standing outside his door with no shirt on. Clara turned to the domestic workers and the security guards who had come rushing in. "Leave," she said in a calm but firm voice. "Everyone, go back to bed." They looked at each other, hesitated a little, then obeyed. The hall slowly cleared. Michael stood frozen in place. Clara didn't say a word to him. Instead, she turned and marched toward Emily's room. "Come with me," she told Emily, grabbing her wrist. Emily didn't argue. She let Clara pull her inside the room and quietly shut the door. Clara stood tall in front of her younger sister, eyes wide and filled with disbelief. "Tell me the truth, Emily," she said slowly. "Did Michael come into your room?" Emily lowered her eyes, acting shy and scared. "Yes," she said in a quiet voice. Clara's heart sank. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "He came in?" she repeated. "On his own?" Emily nodded again, more confidently this time. "Yes. He came in while I was sleeping. I woke up, and he was beside me. I told him to leave, but he refused." Clara's hands began to shake. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Has he tried this before?" Emily looked away as if she were embarrassed. Then she nodded once more. "He's been making passes at me for weeks. He would always stare, try to talk to me when you weren't around. I never told you because I didn't want to ruin your home." Tears fell from Clara's eyes. She held her head in her hands, not knowing what to say or believe. "You won't tell anyone about this, right?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Please, Emily, don't tell anyone. I'll talk to him." Emily didn't say anything. She just shrugged and sat on the edge of the bed, crossing her legs. Clara wiped her eyes and left the room slowly. Meanwhile, Michael sat alone in his room, his face buried in his hands. His chest was tight with anxiety. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he thought about what had just happened. He knew what Emily had done. He knew what she was trying to do. But what would he say? Who would believe him? Just then, Clara burst into the room. "I'm disappointed, Michael," she said angrily. Michael looked up quickly. His eyes were red from crying. "What?" he asked in a weak voice. "You think I did it?" "What do you expect me to think?" she said. "You were outside the room in just your shorts. She said you went into her room." "And you believe her?" he asked, his voice shaking. "You believe your sister over your own husband?" Clara stared at him. "Obviously, Michael. She has nothing to gain from lying." Michael swallowed hard. "Neither do I." Clara shook her head slowly. "I just can't talk to you right now." She turned around and walked out, leaving him alone in his pain. That night was the longest of Michael's life. He didn't sleep. He sat on his bed with his eyes open, his thoughts spinning faster. He thought about his marriage, his reputation, and his future. Everything he had worked for was about to fall apart because of one person, Emily. Morning came, and the sound of birds singing was replaced by loud voices at the gate. Michael frowned. What was that noise? He stood up and walked to the window, still in his pajamas. Outside the mansion, behind the tall white gates, was a crowd of people, reporters. Cameras clicked. Microphones were in the air. News vans are parked on the road. Some of them were shouting his name. "Michael! Mr. Bennett, is it true? Can we get a statement, sir?" "Michael, did you harass your wife's sister?" Michael's heart dropped into his stomach. He stepped back from the window, breathing hard. How did they know? Who told them? He rushed to the hallway, just as Clara stepped out of her room. "What's going on?" she asked, confused. Michael pointed outside. "The press. They're here. They know about the situation." Clara's eyes widened. She ran to her window and saw the crowd too. She turned to Michael, her voice shaky. "I didn't tell anyone. I swear, I didn't say a word. Michael looked away. But in his heart, he already knew what had happened. She didn't speak last night when Clara begged her not to say a word. She stayed quiet. But maybe she didn't stay silent. He walked back to his room, but this time, his legs felt weak. His head was spinning. He didn't even know what the media knew or how much they had heard. Would anyone believe his side of the story? Would Clara ever trust him again? And what was Emily really after? The morning sky had barely turned blue when the distant sound of sirens shattered the calm in the upscale Los Angeles neighborhood where the Bennett estate stood. Michael and Clara were still reeling from the commotion of the press gathered outside their front gates. The voices of reporters shouting Michael's name echoed faintly through the mansion's high windows. Suddenly, the louder blare of sirens got closer. 2 black and white police cruisers rolled up the long private driveway. Their lights flashed red and blue across the white marble facade of the luxurious mansion. Michael stepped forward, confused and tense. Clara stood beside him, arms wrapped tightly around her silk robe, her eyes wide with anxiety. The police cars stopped at the front of the house. 4 officers stepped out, all dressed in LAPD uniforms. One of them, a tall, clean-shaven man with a firm jawline and a serious expression, approached the couple. He held out a badge. "Good morning. I'm Detective Randall from the Los Angeles Police Department. These are Officers Perez, Mitchell, and Lopez." Michael stared at the group, stunned. "What's this about, officer?" Detective Randall replied, "We received a report of sexual harassment at this address. We're here to investigate and speak with a Mr. Michael Bennett." Clara's mouth fell open. Sexual harassment? There must be some mistake. Who made this report? Before the detective could respond, the front door creaked open behind them. Emily stepped out, dressed casually in jeans and a fitted sweater, but her face carried the perfect blend of vulnerability and tension. She spoke softly but clearly. "I did. I called the police. Michael harassed me." Michael's face went white. He took a step back, shaking his head in disbelief. "Emily, what the hell are you talking about?" Clara turned to her sister, stunned. "Emily? I didn't want to say anything at first," Emily said, looking down and blinking fast as if she was holding back tears. "But I couldn't stay quiet anymore. He came into my room. He tried to." "Stop it!" Michael yelled, his voice shaking. "You know that's not true!" Detective Randall held up a hand. "Sir, I need you to calm down." Clara looked from Michael to Emily, confused and overwhelmed. "Ma'am," Randall said to Emily, "do you want to press formal charges?" Emily nodded, slowly. "All right, Mr. Bennett, you'll need to come with us for questioning," the detective said, as the officer stepped closer. Michael's mouth opened and closed like he couldn't find the words. "You can't be serious. I didn't do anything." Clara placed her hand on his arm. "Michael." "I swear, Clara, I never touched her," he said, his eyes glistening. "I would never." The officers gently but firmly placed Michael in handcuffs. He didn't resist, but the betrayal burned in his chest. As he was led to the police car, neighbors stood on their lawns, and reporters shouted questions from behind the iron gate. Back inside the house, Clara stared at Emily. "You need to drop this," Clara said in a low voice. Emily turned her face away. "Please," Clara whispered. "He's my husband." But Emily didn't answer. Later that afternoon, Clara was allowed to visit Michael at the precinct. He sat on the other side of the glass in the visiting area, his hands clasped tightly together. "They're saying I might be charged, Clara," Michael said, voice cracking. "For something I didn't do. You have to believe me." Clara stared at him, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know what to believe anymore." Michael's heart broke at her words. Outside, the press continued to gather. Clara sat on the edge of the leather couch in the living room, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her heart pounded with anxiety as she looked at Emily, who stood calmly by the window, sipping from a glass of orange juice as though nothing had happened. The California sun poured through the tall windows, but it didn't bring any warmth to the cold silence in the room. "Please, Emily," Clara pleaded, her voice breaking. "This doesn't have to go any further. You know Michael would never hurt anyone, least of all you. Can't we just talk about this? Emily turned slowly, her expression unreadable. Clara, I've already made my statement. The police believe me. The press believes me. This isn't something I can just take back. Clara's eyes welled up with tears. But you know what this will do to him, to us, to our whole family. Emily didn't answer. She set her glass down and walked out of the room, leaving Clara in stunned silence. Days passed. Michael remained in detention, isolated in a stark white holding cell that seemed colder with every passing hour. He sat on the edge of the cot, staring at the wall. His mind was a storm of thoughts, fear, betrayal, and heartbreak. How did it come to this? All he had ever done was protect his marriage, protect his home. But now his name was all over the news. Billionaire businessman accused of assaulting sister-in-law, the headline screamed. It felt like a bad dream. The part that broke him the most wasn't even the false accusation. It was Clara. The woman he had built a life with. The one person he believed would always stand by him. She didn't trust him. He remembered the look on her face the day he was arrested, disappointed, distant, lost. And she hadn't visited since the last time. After 4 long days, Michael finally asked for a press interview. His legal team was hesitant at first, but he insisted. The small press room inside the detention center was quiet when he stepped in, dressed in the same plain clothes he had been arrested in. He looked tired, worn out, but there was fire in his eyes. I just want the world to know, he began, his voice calm but filled with pain, that I am innocent. I did not do what I am being accused of. My name, my reputation, my family, everything I've worked for is being destroyed by a lie. He paused, took a deep breath, and continued. I don't know what changed in Emily. I don't know why she's doing this, but I swear on everything I have, in my life, I never touched her. I never hurt her. All I ever did was say no. Some of the reporters looked down awkwardly. Others just scribbled his words, not caring if they believed him or not. To them, it was just another scandal. Outside the walls of the detention center, the story spread even more. TV stations ran clips from Michael's interview. Some people showed sympathy, others mocked him. Social media was split in half. Some said he was lying, and others thought it was a setup. Even Emily's parents got involved. They flew down from Oregon to see their daughter. They met with her privately in the mansion and pleaded with her. Emily, her father said softly, you know what this will do to him. If this goes to court, if the case moves forward, it could ruin his entire life. Her mother added, think of Clara. Think of our family. You're tearing it apart. But Emily didn't budge. Her voice was calm, her eyes cold. You weren't there. You didn't see what he did. I'm not backing down. The Bennett's lawyer called Clara, asking her to try once more to talk to Emily before the court hearing, but she felt helpless. Her heart was torn in two. One part of her wanted to trust Michael. The other part couldn't shake the image of him standing half-dressed in the hallway the night Emily screamed. Finally, the official court summons arrived. Michael Bennett was to appear in court the following week to answer charges of harassment and attempted assault. Inside the jail, Michael sat on his bunk and stared at the folded paper in his hand. His lawyer had just left. The court date was set. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and buried his face in his hands. This is real, he whispered to himself. This is happening. He thought about the companies he had built from the ground up, the awards he had won, the communities he had supported with charity. None of it mattered now. In the public eye, he was already guilty. A soft knock came on the wall beside the small window of his cell. It was the guard. Phone call, Mr. Bennett. Michael stood slowly and followed the officer to the booth. He picked up the receiver. It was Clara. Her voice was quiet. I don't know what to believe anymore. Michael felt a lump rise in his throat. I didn't do it, Clara. I swear to you, on everything I am. There was silence on the line. I want to believe you, she whispered. I just don't know how. Tears rolled down Michael's face. You have to. Please, Clara, don't let her win. Don't let this lie destroy us. But the call ended before she could respond. The week was counting down, and with each passing day, the walls were closing in on Michael.